Today we read Jeremiah chapter 18 verses 1 to 6. Picture a potter shaping clay on a wheel. Have you ever watched, fascinated, as hands shape wet clay in that way? Or even done it yourself, perhaps? When the shape goes wrong, it's easy just to scrape it off the wheel, flatten it down, roll it into a ball again, throw it back onto the wheel and spin and shape the clay again. Jeremiah watched this, as he perhaps had done many times, and reflected about God's dealing with his people. When things go wrong, what do? Start again. So he warned the people, the covenant people who had God's promises, that they should not feel complacent. God can change his mind. Those words are repeated twice in this passage. He could adopt another nation. He could give up with Israel. If Israel does not turn out as he intended, and they weren't in Jeremiah's time, then beware. Those warnings were uttered by the prophets at the same time, almost, as assurances that God would not abandon his people, but that God would always forgive and restore them. Human nature being what it is, we need to hear both messages somehow. The seriousness of the state we're in, that needs reform, cleansing, purifying, and the faithfulness of God, who can be trusted to go on loving us however much we betray him, who will always be there to return to. On a more individual level, I wonder if you've ever wished to do as the potter does with your own life. If there's ever been a point where you would have loved to stop the wheel, scrape off the clay and start afresh with no baggage, no consequences of all that's gone before. I imagine most of us have had that feeling, if we're honest. How did I get to this point? How did it come to this? What can I do? How can I unwind? It's not possible. If only I could go back to before, whatever it was. Well, we can and we can't. We can have God's full forgiveness for mistakes made in the past, yes. But we still have to live with the consequences, and so do others who may have been affected by our mistakes. We can allow God, cooperate with God as he remoulds us in a new way, to make that new beginning, to grow differently to before. But at the same time, we can't escape any lasting consequences. We have to deal with them. Like in the Garden of Eden, a story which encapsulates a great deal of powerful wisdom. Adam and Eve's lives change forever after they go wrong, and they have to live with the consequences, which are spelt out in Genesis chapter 3. But there is mercy too from God. God provides them with clothes. God limits the evil they can do and the suffering they can experience by making them mortal. And of course, as we read on, God continues to feature as a character in the story of the primeval human race, generation by generation. They are not abandoned by God. And this continuing relationship leads to the covenant with Abraham and on from there. The clay is remoulded in a different shape. It's the same clay, but God continues to work with it and shape it over the generations and through history. Thank God that clay can be reworked.